Hi, this is Ray Martinez. Thank you for joining me on the podcast today. I've titled this message today as Sleepy Time. Have you ever heard of that? There's a tea that you can buy that's called Sleepy Time, and it's supposed to help you sleep when you have a hard time getting to sleep at night. And obviously there are hundreds of products out there to help you sleep. I want to share with you what the Bible has to say about sleep and rest. First, let me share a short story I read from the Daily Bread. I don't know if you get that or not, but it's a great little daily devotion that comes up automatically, or you can buy it in the book form. But here's what it says. My neighbor Sam returned home one night without his car. It was stolen, he told his wife, then added, "I'm going to sleep. I'll sort it out in the morning." His wife was flabbergasted. She couldn't understand how Sam could be so calm, but he explained, "What else can I do? Panicking won't make any difference." My ever-sensible neighbor could see there was no point worrying. He trusted that the authorities would be able to find this missing car later on, which they did. It's a good point. Why do we worry ourselves to death? Once we've relinquished it to the authorities, let them deal with it. Let me ask you this. Did the Apostle Peter feel likewise after being thrown into prison? Look at Acts 12, verse 4. Our reading comes from Acts 12, 4 through 6. And he says, "Then he imprisoned him, placing him under the guard of the 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. Herod intended to bring Peter out for public trial after the Passover. But while Peter was in prison, the church prayed very earnestly for him. The night before Peter was to be placed on trial, he was asleep, fastened with 2 chains between 2 soldiers. Others stood guard at the prison gate." First of all, how could you possibly sleep with chains tied to you and tied to another person? And then Peter has to be thinking, my life might end tomorrow. Wouldn't you be up all night worrying about that? But he wasn't. Peter just went to sleep. Peter was likely to face execution, yet the unusual or the usually impulsive disciple was sleeping between 2 soldiers. The angel had to strike Peter on the side to wake him up. He had to be shaken to be woken up because he was in a deep sleep, suggesting that he was completely calm and at peace. Was it because he knew his life was in God's hands? Look at Acts 12, verses 9 and 11. Suggested that it wouldn't have mattered whether he was rescued or not. Perhaps he recalled the assurance of salvation and glory that Jesus had given him in Matthew 19:28, as well as Christ's call to simply follow me and not worry about what would happen to him. You can see that in John 21, verse 22. No matter what we're facing today, we can trust that God holds our future, both on earth and in heaven. In His mighty hands is where we belong. Perhaps then we can sleep in peace more easily. What worries keep you awake at night? How can you learn to surrender them to God and hold on to His promises? These are very important questions that we struggle with to answer for ourselves. Let's keep in mind that Peter was sleeping the night before Herod was to bring him to trial. That's amazing. Acts 12:6. He'd already been unjustly imprisoned by King Herod for 8 days and would have been sentenced the following day. And like James, his fellow apostle, he too would have been executed. Acts 12, verses 2 through 3. The church was earnestly praying to God for him, unquote. You'll see that in verse 5 and also verses 11 through 12. During his imprisonment, Peter experienced the peace that only Jesus could give. Look at John 14, verse 27. In the Old Testament, David also had a confident trust in God and experienced His peace. He said, in quote, "In peace I will lie down and sleep. For you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety." Psalms 4:8 and Psalms 3, verse 5. No matter what we're facing today, we can turn our situation over to God, knowing that we can trust Him and experience the peace He alone provides. Look at Philippians 4, verses 6 through 7. The Bible contains several passages where God promises rest and sleep to those who trust in Him, often linking peaceful rest to faith, security in His protection, and freedom from anxiety. One of the clearest stories in the New Testament that illustrates people in desperate need of rest and peace, facing terror that prevented any calm, while calling upon God for help, is the account of Jesus calming the storm. You find this in Matthew 8, verses 23 through 27, and Mark 4, verses 35 through 41. The story, based on Mark 4:35 through 41, says that after a long day of teaching crowds by the Sea of Galilee, Jesus said to His disciples, "Let us go over to the other side of the lake." They got into a boat along with some of the other boats and set out. Jesus, exhausted from the day's ministry, went to the stern, in other words, the back of the boat, and fell asleep on a cushion. Suddenly, a furious storm arose. Strong winds whipped up massive waves that crashed over the boat, filling it with water. The disciples, many of whom were experienced fishermen familiar with this lake, were terrified, and they felt they were about to drown. In their fear and desperation, they woke Jesus, crying out, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" In other accounts, it says, "Lord, save us. We're going to drown." Jesus got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Immediately the wind died down, and the sea became completely calm. He then turned to His disciples and He asked, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were amazed and said to one another, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey Him?" This story really shows the disciples in a situation of extreme distress and fear. Well, who can sleep through that? The opposite of rest or peace, calling out to Jesus for rescue. In response, He brings perfect calm, not just to the sea, but demonstrating His power to provide deep peace and rest amid life storms when we turn to Him in faith. So the storms that we are going through, call upon Him, and He will react. He will make a difference. I have personally experienced this. It beautifully illustrates the invitation Jesus later gives. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." That's His promise. Matthew 11, verse 28. Here are some key verses quoted from the NIV translation for consistency. Psalms 127, verse 2. "In vain you rise early and you stay up late, toiling for food to eat, for He grants sleep to those He loves." This really highlights that God provides rest and a provision as a gift for His beloved, making anxious toil unnecessary when we rely on Him. Proverbs 3:24, "When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet." In the context of pursuing wisdom and trusting God, this promises fear-free, refreshing sleep. Matthew 11, verse 28 through 30. These are the words of Jesus. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Jesus directly invites the weary to find deep soul-level rest in Him. It's an invitation. Why wouldn't you take Him up on it? And there are other related passages, including Exodus 33:14, "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest." And Psalms 23, verse 1 through 2, where the Lord leads to green pastures and quiet waters for restoration. He's promising you this rest. These promises emphasize that true rest, both physical sleep and inner peace, comes from trusting God's care and His sovereignty. Personally, there are times when I am scared, worried, or wondering where my friends are when I need them, and even loneliness. I have found in my personal life that whenever I decide to let God handle my worries and stress, and specifically ask Him to grant me sleep and rest in Him, He has never failed me. It always happens. But do we stop to do it? Do we stop to take the action? Besides believing, we have to act on faith, which requires action. We have to trust in Him and call out to Him and cry out to Him if that's what it takes. Take the moment to really call on God to give you the rest that you need. You have a blessed day.